And can you also walk us through your story of how did you end up meeting Bill Ackman? What happened exactly there, and what did you learn from him?
Yes, I've met a lot of like really interesting people in the business, and like you and some of your friends, I was big in reaching out to people when I was young. So when I was in high school, I wrote physical letters to all the big investors in the United States: Bill Ackman, Dan Loeb, just anybody who's in the news, like Jim Simons, Warren Buffett, everybody. I wrote letters to them. And the only one to write me back was Bill Ackman. And he sent this handwritten note with a list of 10 books I should read. And the note said, it was short. And I asked him for advice. And he said, my best advice is you will learn by doing. So just try to do things, and that's how you'll learn. And that was great advice. And so I got this letter, I framed it, and it made a big impact for me as a high schooler. And then in college, as I was getting more into the short side, I was very closely following his Herbalife saga. I was obsessed with Herbalife and all the people doing research on Herbalife. And I cold emailed him when I was in New York. And I remember I was smart with the cold email where I made the subject line fan mail, because I figured, you got to flatter, like you get 100 cold emails, you're always going to open the one that says fan mail. And he agreed to meet with me, and I got to meet with him for 30 minutes in his office. And I brought the letter he had sent me so many years ago. And I asked him just a bunch of questions, and I pitched him on a short thesis or two. And it was really good. And I was really, I wanted to ask him questions and learn, but I was also trying to convince him to give me an internship, which, didn't end up happening. But he was very nice, very smart. I remember he wanted to get through a lot of questions quickly. Like sometimes you meet with somebody and they just want to talk for an hour, ask them questions and they talk. He was more interested in the questions and, seeing all the things I'd ask him. And he expressed, some pain from the short selling stuff and said he wouldn't do that in the future because Herbalife was so painful and caused distraction. But, just the fact that he took the time to respond to my letter in high school has given me a very big soft spot.
Do you remember the 10 books that he had mentioned, or some of them?
I tweeted it out. It was an old school list. It was, I think, One Up on Wall Street. There's a Peter Lynch book. The book about MBIA, Confidence Game about him, I'm pretty sure was on the list. Intelligent Investor was on the list. There's the tweet that we'll include the link to, but it was a very old school list.
And what did you write in that letter that convinced him to, let's say, reply to your letter back? What did you write exactly?
I think I just said, I'm a high schooler, really passionate about investing. What should I do to accelerate my career? And he said, I would read all these 10 books, and then you need to start investing because you will learn by doing. And that's kind of a philosophy that I even, had a little bit with the Bear Cave, is you learn when you're actively looking into these companies and writing and getting feedback and meeting people. So you will learn by doing is a great piece of advice. And I think the other piece of advice, to allude to something you said earlier, what I learned at Sophos and Jim Carruthers, is I remember I asked Jim, what's your best piece of advice? And he said, a little bit of initiative goes such a long way in life. And that's something I've learned, is just cold emailing, just taking a little bit of initiative, going off the beaten path a little, just taking an extra step goes a super long way in life.
And when you wrote that cold email, so the subject line was fan mail.
Yeah.
And what was the cold email? Like, why do you think he responded to your, subject line was one reason, but what did you write exactly in that cold email?
Should I follow up the email?
Yeah, sure. That'll be amazing. That'll be super interesting.
Dear Mr. Ackman, I'm a Stanford junior, very passionate about short selling and a big fan of yours. I appreciate your fight on Herbalife front and how it exposed wrongdoing to the benefit of society. I appreciate how your activism at companies like Canadian Pacific benefited those beyond your firm. If you have any time in your busy schedule, I'd love to meet and receive feedback on a few ideas I'm working on. I previously interned at SEC, Sophos, and published short ideas online. I'm currently living in New York as part of a college program. I would be happy to meet whenever and wherever convenient for you. Please let me know if you're available.
Oh.
And the response was, here's my secretary, she'll set something up. So I think the key for cold emails, though, is you got to keep it brief.
Yeah.
You got to keep it clear, and you want to do something to differentiate yourself. So any really successful person gets, 100 cold emails. So if you do like linking to a write-up you did, or including a write-up, just something that shows you've done the extra step is good. I've also, for really people I want to meet, I like saying I'll meet wherever and whenever convenient for you. Because sometimes these guys, they get something, and then the guy's like, well, this is the 1 hour that works for me. And then it becomes a whole scheduling thing. I've literally had people who, say, oh, I'd be open to meeting with you, or, like, when do you want to meet? And I'll say, tomorrow, all day I'm free. And I'm not free. I'll just cancel whatever I have. But if you do that, you try to get it as soon as possible, that dramatically increases the chances you'll, get what you.
Have you met Warren Buffett?
No, I haven't. So I think we talked about this. I sent so many letters to Warren Buffett as a high school student that they literally, I think, got concerned. So they sent me an email back and they said, do not show up here. He won't meet with you. I think they thought I was like stalkerish. So then I stopped, doing that. But yeah, I obviously know more people in the short world than the long side, but just, meeting some of these people and that's another thing I say, especially for younger people and when you're a student, is you have this huge opportunity to meet people, because as soon as you're more of an adult and you graduate, you lose that innocence and purity, and people are less willing to like give you a lifeline and help you out. But when you're super young, people are just love helping students, especially from their alma mater. So the other thing I did in college, especially when I was in New York for a quarter, is I'd just look at the big investment firms. I'd see whoever went to my college and I'd cold email them, because people love to help people from their university. Not necessarily it's rational, but just what people do. So I was very good at just, I think when I was in New York, I would send 100 cold emails a week. And the response rate might be 10%, and 5 of those meet. But me and a friend, we do that just in our respective industries. There's so many cold emails as a college student, and it really paid off big time for us.
Wow, that's a lot of cold emails, 100 a week.
I mean, but think about it. So, most people aren't going to respond, right? And we even got it down to a science where I figured out, I think it's best to send them in the afternoon. So there was this study done on judges, and it turns out the judges give more lenient sentences after the lunch break, because you're cranky at 11 a.m. when you're waiting for lunch, but you're happier after you've gotten lunch and belly filled, and that's when you're happiest. So you always want to send the cold email in the afternoon, get it to them at 1 p.m. and not 11 a.m. So, and I kind of figured that Sundays were best, because Sundays were when people were less busy. And, when you're super busy during the week, you're like, I don't have time for this tweet. But when it's a Sunday, you're with your family, you're happier, feeling like a great person. So Sunday afternoons, I would either send all the emails or schedule them all out with a friend to go out then to all the people. And the response rate might be 10, 20%. And then oftentimes people will respond, say, I'm busy, or I appreciate it. But, then a lot of people, really successful people, would be willing to meet with me as a student. And I'd go in and I'd always do a lot of research on their backgrounds, try to show I did work, and to have like personalized questions. And I'd always go in with an idea to pitch. And sometimes they wouldn't be interested in it. And obviously, if I'm just a student, I'm probably not going to wow them with the research abilities. But that would really help. And I think one story that I haven't told before that is funny and shows the persistence here is there's one fund near my college campus who just would never respond to my emails. They would never, they get back to me. And they normally, if people said, no, I can't meet with you, I'd respect it. For this fund, they just never responded ever. So I really wanted to meet with them. Everyone said, you got to meet with them. So I took just randomly the Caltrain up to their offices. And this is, I think, as a freshman. So I was 18. And I said, I'm just going to show up randomly and see if they'll meet with me. And I go to the lobby at this big building, and the hedge fund's on whatever, the penthouse floor. And I say, can I go meet with this hedge fund? I'm a young guy. I want to talk to them. And the guy says, do you have a meeting? I say, no. He's like, absolutely not. You can't go in without entry at all. And 99% of students will be like, okay, I shot my shot. I left. But I still haven't gotten an official no. So I go and I get on LinkedIn and I just start messaging people at the hedge fund. I'm a freshman in college. I'm passionate about this. I'm in your lobby right now. Can you please let me come up? And I want to pitch you an idea. Yeah. And eventually somebody called down and said, okay, let him up. So I go up to this very, very
Oh, wow.
respected hedge fund and I pitch them a bunch of ideas. And they tell me after, we figured you are either here to rob us or you're going to be a special guy. And then we decided to let you meet. And I think some of the people at that firm still read the Bear Cave to this day.
Oh, wow.
So you can't do that once you graduate. It's weird to just show up randomly and be really persistent. But as a college student, you have this like special innocence and ability to really kind of will things. So that's one of the things that's served me well in my career is just being so social as a young guy.
I think, being persistent is very underrated. And I feel like persistence is a quality or that is something which differentiates a successful person from another one.
Yeah.
And I still remember, so I'll share one story with you. So I wanted to interview the Dean of Harvard Business School, Dr. Shrikant Datar. And he's an Indian chartered accountant. So I've also studied chartered accountancy from India. So I sent him a cold email in July 2021.
Yeah.
That was the first cold email. I got a reply that he's occupied because of the COVID pandemic and he'll do it at a later year of the deanship. I sent another email in January 2022, which is almost 6 months down the line. And I get a reply that he's not going to do it now because he's occupied with the deanship. And I was very sad because he had said yes earlier and now he's saying no.
Yeah.
In April 2023, which is like 1 year, 4 months afterwards, I sent another cold email just to try my luck that, okay, whether he'll be okay or not. Then I sent another email that, sir, it's been 2 years. I've been following up and I really want to do a podcast with you. Can you give me like a half an hour slot? I'd just love to talk about your journey and discuss about how Howard is helping students in order to accelerate in their career, etc. I get a reply from his secretary 2 days after my email stating that he is okay to do it on 17th of July 2023, which was almost 3 months later. And then I get a final interview, final podcast in July 2023, which was almost 2 years afterwards, after my first cold email. So he really liked the persistence, I think. And it took me 2 years to host the Dean of Harvard Business School.
I have so many stories like that where I've heard from other people. It's just following up. Oftentimes, if I cold email people and don't get a response, when I was a college student, I'd follow up in 2 weeks. Now I have a newsletter interview series written called Idea Brunch, where I interview up and coming great investment managers, written interviews. So I'm always looking, and I always look for people who haven't been interviewed before. And people who haven't been interviewed before are tough to get the interview written. So I reach out to them. And sometimes I won't get a response. Very rarely people will say no, but I often say I'm busy, so follow up in a year. And then I follow up in a year and they say I'm still busy, but follow up. And there's been people I follow up just every 6 months for 2 years and then they eventually agree to do it. And then boom, it's one of the best interviews ever. So just the ability to follow up, and I kind of have it down to a science now, like these are the people I think are really great. And I'm just going to follow up every 6 months until they either do it or they say no. It really differentiates you because a lot of really successful people, they'll get a lot of inbound interest. But if you can, show you're a little different and have a polite persistence, and don't get to a harassing level and accept no if they just ask not to be contacted again. But polite persistence and initiative, huge, huge differentiating factors.
And do you have any productivity hacks that you follow on a regular basis, which helps you to keep more disciplined and which helps you to keep more sincere about the work that you're doing? Like maybe some hacks that you use.
I think the biggest thing now in terms of productivity hacks is AI. I mean, people who can use ChatGPT or other AI tools effectively, it's a game changer. So to what I said before is literally just every month I'm asking ChatGPT deep research, look through all the IPOs and SPAC mergers and find me ones with high levels of consumer complaints. So in a way, I got eyes on every company going public on a fairly active basis. And that's something you can't replicate as a human. So, I've really just by using it a lot and interacting with the tool, I think people who get really good at using ChatGPT or similar tools are just going to be so much more productive than people who aren't native with it. So just by far and away in terms of being future focused and more productive, finding ways to use ChatGPT effectively, I think or AI tools effectively is going to be a huge thing.
Are you using any other AI tools for your research apart from ChatGPT?
No, it's really ChatGPT deep research. I'm trying to build out my own software tools to help do research better. But in terms of AI tools, ChatGPT is what it is.
If you learned something new from this video, do share it with your friends and subscribe to this channel so that we can bring you the best content possible. Also, if you want to watch this entire episode, click on the link in the description box and you can go to Kushal Lodha YouTube channel and watch the entire podcast episode. Thank you so much for watching this and have an amazing day.